we've got another question further at the back. So
it's kind of a build really on that. I'm probably the newest author here. My name's Claire King. And this week I signed with Bloomsbury for my first novel. So it's always very important to me. And I'm actually an economist. I read economics here, so I'm into statistics. And last week I read a website called Vida who said that 70% around of literary reviews, so the Times Literary Supplement and the Paris Review and the New York Times, 70% of the reviews are of novels written by men, and around 70% of the reviewers are male novels. And that's today. I know it's better than 1 in 12, but that's still today. Yes. And I think I read a follow-up article that said that actually that's because about 70% of books published are by men. Still today. So
that's not, I don't think that's true, but the 70% of reviews is true, and actually somebody called R.J. West did a whole book about that about 15 years ago, so alas, obviously nothing has changed.
I know that several people, Jessica's been waiting for a little bit, do you mind? Sorry.
No, I'd like to say something on that point, which I was going to say too. I'm not only a novelist, but I'm also a reviewer. And I've often noticed that even nowadays, the vast majority of reviews are by men, of books by men. And it's always mystified me that this should happen, because actually in my specialty, for example, which is crime fiction, at least 1/3 of books published by women. Now, one of the reasons this happens is that the publishers aren't sending books by women out. In theory, I'm sent everything in the crime area to read, and I manage to review about 1/10 of what I get. And I try to review equally as many books by women as by men, but I'm not sent them. And I think that publishers are assuming that literary editors want to review books by men, therefore they aren't wasting their money sending out books by women. But if any of you does a statistical test on the book review pages of the Sunday papers and the Saturday papers, you will see that even today, women are still not being reviewed as much as men. And it's a very peculiar fact. But that, I know there's a difference between commercial publishing and the literary canon. But I think the literary canon begins with the books that are reviewed in the Sunday papers. And this is what's happening.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add some more statistics. I write series television.
Can you stand up so that people at the back can hear?
I write series television, and the Writers Guild recently put together some statistics on the credits for writers which are published in the Radio Times. And on a good week, 20% are female. And when I get jobs, it's quite often on a series, for example, like Silent Witness, of, oh good, yes, perhaps we should have a woman writer. And when I try and say, but I'm a writer, no, you're a woman writer. You know, and it's, you know, it's obviously therefore clearly slotting into a male series in some sense that I fail to understand, but anyway, depressing.
Would you like to respond to this one?
Yeah.
It's about positive discrimination, and I know that's such a filthy term, but it has to be done more unconsciously. When I worked in television on a program called The Late Show, which was a cultural commentators program, what would almost invariably happen was that when we were casting a discussion about an important political or cultural fact, the first name that would come up would be a male name. And so once the male had been the first name that you picked, the woman had to also be bringing something that the man wasn't bringing, like black, one-legged, or whatever. I'm being joking now. But it was always that the first authority was male, and therefore you had to construct and cast the discussion around that. And for a long period of time, what we did was to say to ourselves, the first name we will pick will be female. The first name we will pick will be female. And to our surprise, of course, then it was harder to find the men. Right? So some of this is an unconscious thing that is built up, which we as women are as guilty of as men. Some of it will be addressed by the fact that there are now many more women whose first names come to you. But it's subtle, some of this. And also to say that one of the things that began the Women's Prize for Fiction, the Orange Prize, was exactly that same analysis 20 years ago, and I can remember exactly when it happened. It was the Booker Prize when Wise Children by Angela Carter was not on the shortlist, when there was in fact either no women on the shortlist or just one. And I can remember sitting in the television studio stunned by that list. and a number of people were equally stunned. And suddenly, as opposed to going, oh yeah, there's no women, we were kind of going, there's no women, right? And it was almost the difference between, oh God, isn't that awful, Nicola? And excuse me, and to go back to your point about us not liking men, do you see what I mean? It's when you raise your voice sometimes to say something very strongly, it doesn't mean that you're attacking the person about which you're saying it. It means that they too have probably been thinking it as well, and you need to have a discussion which is not going to be had while we're all still whispering about it. And I feel that so strongly.
I do too. I think that the day when we don't need the Orange Prize anymore will be the day when this battle has been won.
If I could just come in on the prize-winning thing, I absolutely agree with Nicola that one of the issues here is values, and with Sarah, that part of the question is about the values that make a big book, an important book, and so on. I'm a crime writer, and the chief prize for crime writing in the UK is called the Gold Dagger. Until 2 years ago, it was sponsored by the Duncan Laurie Private Bank, so it had a rather magnificent amount of money attached, £20,000. And I was the official Crime Writers Association observer at the prize discussion. And James Nocte, the radio announcer, opened up the conversation by saying, well, we needn't talk long, he said, and he identified one book by a man which was a particularly violent and rather nasty book in my view, and he said this is the only book that's big enough to be taken seriously on the list. Luckily, he didn't get his way.
Yes. We've got time probably for just one or two more questions if anybody's got one. I've got one. There we are. Jo.
Thank you. My name's Jackie Collis-Harvey. I came up to Newnham in 1981, and this is partly prompted by a conversation I had with my goddaughter, who is just about to leave university and lives in Cambridge. I work as a publisher. I've also just finished my first book and have found an agent for it. At a time when Cambridge is contemplating bringing in tuition fees of £9,000 a year, I think it is, and women are still in a world where they are going to earn less than men over their career, for most of us it seems to be the case, how many people are actually going to be able to study English here, to become writers here? If I was a student going to university now, I would think very, very carefully about being able to read English and the sort of debt that I would be coming out of university with, and what that would affect about my choices as to whether it was possible for me to be a writer or if I wanted to be a writer.
We don't have a response from the principal on this. You're trying to wind us up.
What I'm actually going to do is to take that very important point as part of my thank you, because obviously as a college we're thinking very carefully about what it is that will reach out to the wider world and will encourage young women to both be educated and to think about what they might do in life with the terrible hurdle of these fees. And so everything that we're doing here and with the Literary Archive is part of that wider thought, and there are many other thoughts that governing body, of course, is engage bursaries and so on, but it's really very important. May I thank everybody very much. I think what you were saying, Nicola, at the end of your remarks about the enjoyment has to be the middle, the beginning and the end. I'd like to thank Nicola very much indeed, because in a way her book, A Very Great Profession, and all her work at Persephone Press was the inspiration for us realising that there was this gap and that Newnham was the obvious place to fill it. So thank you very much. Thank all our writers here, and we are basking in the glow of your achievements, and we hope to help you carry them forward and new generations to join you. So thank you very much indeed.